Okay, all right. We're ready to get started here, folks, and good evening. I will call the meeting to order, and would you like to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, Mary, could we get a roll call, please?
Olson.
Here.
Collins.
Here.
Johnson. Here. Kellum.
Here.
Kopsinski.
Here.
Coburn.
Here.
Okay, and first on the agenda for scheduled business is communication, and this is accepting Wendy Ezel's resignation from the Planning Commission.
I would move that we accept her resignation and send her a letter of thank you.
And send a thank you note. Thank you.
That was the second, right?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. Okay, and next is business from the public. And I'd kind of like to remind everybody what some of the items that are on the agenda this evening is a decision that was already made by the council last December, and that was to refer the question to the voters on whether we should have recreational marijuana dispensaries or not. And also, the other question is for imposing a tax on the sale of marijuana, so which is also required by the state to go to the voters. So what's being actually of the council to decide tonight is just referring the questions to the voters tonight. So with that, is there anyone from business from the public? Okay, yes. And could I also kind of make sure we don't have repeated information? I know we've kind of heard a lot about this the last close to probably 3 years, and I do remember when it came to the medical only is, you know, we were kind of talked into it that it would be bringing in tax money, so, and that's what.
That was not for me, so.
Yep, so no, I think if you look back on the tapes, it was, so, on some of the folks that are here, yes. So.
All right, well, my first name is Trey, and my last name is Moore. It is spelled M-O-R-K. I live at 2614 Berry Place, Albany. City councilors, elected officials, and representatives of this great city of Albany. Your citizens come to you today to reason with you, to find a solution that doesn't just work for you, but works for all of Albany, its citizens and its small business owners. When Albany voted on recreational marijuana in Oregon, we voted yes, and that meant that we wanted to see it in our city as well as the rest of Oregon, and yet you still chose to ban it. This city council is actually the only city council in Oregon who voted against the sale of recreational marijuana when the majority of its citizens voted for it. That is an injustice. It is your civic duties to represent your people, and you have failed to do so. Now you are getting ready to vote on something that hasn't even been decided yet. But you're doing so because you already know what your people want, and that's recreational marijuana sales in this city. You already know you're going to lose this battle with your citizens this November to keep recreational sales out of Albany. And that's why you are voting on trying to restrict it to such a small spot that it would prohibit any of the current dispensaries from selling recreationally, and once again, you will have done an injustice upon your city. By restricting the places where recreational cannabis can be sold, you are telling the dispensaries currently operating medically in your city that we aren't good enough, that you don't want to see us succeed. You are turning your backs on the very people that make this city so great, Albany citizens, born and raised. I've lived here my entire life. The people who run these dispensaries in your town rely on these jobs to be active members of this community. And with recreational cannabis sales, we can employ even more of Albany's amazing citizens. You can have even more successful small businesses that growing cities like ours thrive on, and even help lower Albany's unemployment rates. You have already allowed Albany to grow when you allowed Lowe's and Winco to open up shop here. We are just asking for the same opportunities to succeed that you've given these big corporations. Or do you not care about your small business owners as much as you care about big business in Albany? We are frustrated. We have worked hard, even together, to make medical marijuana a huge success in Albany. It would be a major injustice for you to only allow recreational dispensaries to operate in a small area of Albany, to a point where no current dispensary could operate recreationally. First of all, because the dispensaries in Albany don't have the kind of income needed to relocate to one of your specified zones if we did want to sell recreationally. And second, what is to stop other dispensaries which have had recreational marijuana in their town, who have had a year of early sales to save up, from expanding to Albany? Once again, your citizens who have worked here, worked very hard to make a name for themselves in this town, would come out with the short end of the stick by not having the same opportunities that other dispensaries have had in Oregon. We cannot stand for this any longer, and we will not stand for this any longer. We know that you don't really care about what a lot of us have to say up here, but let me tell you this. If you guys decide to overly restrict the dispensaries already here in Albany on where they can sell recreational cannabis to a city that's already voted not once, but twice that they want it, then we will be forced to take legal action against you, and we will win for the citizens of Albany. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you, Trey. And also a reminder that we're not taking any action on time, place, and manner tonight, so. Okay, all right. Yep, Ray?
My name is Ray Hiltz, and I live at 2748 Foxglove Loop, southeast, Albany 97322, which is in the Mennonite Village. I used to live on 30th and Tequina. Over the last quite a few years, the street was slurried, and so that allowed the streets to stay nice and clean. Didn't have to have reconstruction. My wife and I, unfortunately, she is in a walking boot, and since we don't have a disabled sign because it's kind of a 6-7 week handicap, we had to walk about a block and a half to the concert. Well, if any of you have driven down Water Street along the railroad tracks and seen how the street is deteriorating. I've been in town for 29 years approximately, and there's a lot of streets in deterioration. Several weeks ago, I was here promoting a gas tax. I've done a little Googling, finding out what a 5-cent tax would do to help our streets and sidewalks either to be slurried or to be reconstructed. Yes, a little over $1 million would not fix it in 1 year, but over a period of years. And what I'm requesting tonight is that you put to the vote of the people a 5-cent tax strictly for street repair, for nothing else. I know that most of you, well, some of you have been on the council for a long time, like Dick. The council has been kicking it down the street for a lot of years. So it's time to let the citizens decide, do they want to have maybe a utility tax? I don't think so. I think they would vote to have a city gas tax. Portland passed, citizens of Portland passed a 10 cent a gallon tax. So we're not asking for 10, or I'm not asking for 10 cent, I think 5 cents. So I'm requesting in your discussion before time runs out to consider putting it to the vote of the people. And so are there any questions? I'll be glad to answer how I feel, but otherwise, thank you for allowing me to express myself.
Any questions, Ray? Okay, so Ray, while you're here, I was going to update the council on, we were wanting to put it to the voters at the same time as Corvallis, and Corvallis is not ready. So I found out last week from Mayor Traber that Corvallis is not ready to put it on the ballot, so.
I don't think that's important. We're not Corvallis. We're Albany. And if you drive over there, the price of their gas is higher than it is here.
I agree, yep, I agree. Thank you. Thank you, Ray. Okay, yes, Rhea.
I'm Maria Graham. I have Albany's County Kitchen in Amsterdam. I live at 1440 Lawn Ridge Street, Southwest in Albany, Ward 1. I have a few points I'd like to make. Medicine is not taxed in Oregon, so the medical marijuana program would never have offered up tax money. We want to have people pay pot tax to fill our potholes. What's wrong with that? It's millions of dollars that'll be handed to this city. At the end of the evening here, you're going to renew 4 more liquor licenses for this town, for restaurants, for little stores, for all that business. But you're not going to let recreational cannabis in? It's an intoxicant regulated by the same commission. I don't get it, and neither does anyone else. The OLCC is going to put 10 more liquor stores, hard liquor stores, in each of Lynn, Benton, and Lane counties. I do hope that councilors Kellum and Collins and Johnson and the good mayor will all fight equally as hard in opposition to those liquor stores as you have for recreational cannabis. Please. And I would request that on your ban that you're going to vote or put to the voters, it should be a no vote means to not have cannabis sold instead of a yes vote, because it's a politician way of saying, you know, people are thinking they're voting yes for recreational cannabis sales and you're telling them no. So, thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so I think that was it that I saw for business from the public. Okay. And I think Ms. Etzel, isn't it? You don't live in Albany?
No,
Is
but I do
that-
have a business here.
Okay, you do now? Okay.
Have since 2014. Forgot to make that note to you in the past.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Cindy Etzel. I live at 15241 Skelton Road, Jefferson, Oregon. I have a business at 820 Southeast Pacific Boulevard in Oregon. As you've heard the testimony of many people here, they have a passionate want, need, and desire to be able to enjoy the recreation of having adult use of marijuana in the city. Just and no different than having a glass of wine, scotch, or beer. Don't make the comparison because you don't understand it. I want and the approval of adult use of marijuana is no different than the folks that are also here tonight to renew the liquor license. The voters voted for adult use 2 times, yet the council continues to find ways to restrict adults the right to do something of their own choosing. To continue to be ignorant as to how cannabis affects a human is no longer ignorance. It's being restrictive to the mindset that is no longer applicable to today's wants, truths, needs, and desires of the people. The mission statement says providing quality public service for a better Albany community. If so, why is renewal of liquor licenses okay and part of the public service of Albany and approvable? The vision is a vital and diverse community that promoted a high quality of life, great neighborhoods, balanced economic growth, and quality public service. Serious, balanced economic growth, yet you continually fight against revenue that this industry can bring to the city. Plus remapping zoning so current businesses that could be for adult use cannabis will be pushed out. And why are you changing, manipulating, and enforcing rules that seem so Puritan by today's standards? What does diversified community and economic growth mean to you? There is a great potential here in so many ways. Take off the blinders and see with clear vision so as to what the voters wanted and voted for. It's almost like a kid that keeps going back to the parent and asking for the same thing over again. Within all the time I have sat here and listened, it seems you all get along fine in the sandbox. Take one person to understand the charters and seeing the true angle, being able to use it for the betterment of people, and all of a sudden, bam, there was a rewrite for the charter. Seems like there's a lot of that going on. When considering the ballot, the vernacular needs to be yes for a yes and a no for a no. Trying to confuse or trick the voters is unethical, and manipulating. Please make it clear that a 7-year-old can comprehend the measure. When I was on my way over here, I read that the Gazette, I looked up to see how much Corvallis was going to be getting in their revenue for their 3% tax. $2 to $3 million, folks, in 1 year. That was as of January 14th. Just no FYI. Thank you for your time, and for the council folks that have not researched, walked into a dispensary, it might be time to educate yourself and bring your attitude in line with what the people want and not your own personal agenda. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else from business from the public? Okay, not seeing anyone. Okay, were you wanting to talk about?
I was just going to say, your next item is going to be reconsideration of ordinance. I point out that the ordinance that is in your packet has a number of corrections of Scrivener's errors that were in the ordinance. So the ordinance you will be considering tonight is the one that is in your packet with the lines. And I just point that out so there's no confusion.
Okay, so council, this is one of the...
Page 4.
So that is the correct one?
Yes, but you'll notice there have been corrections. For example,
Oh, yes, yes.
I'm merely pointing out that the corrected version has these lines on it there, so that is the one that is for your consideration tonight. If it is adopted, staff will go through and have a clean copy, but it will not change any of the words. We don't change any ordinance that you adopt without bringing it back to you.
I guess
Okay.
for those people behind the cameras, on the other side of the cameras, Scrivener error we're talking about, a couple of words were misspelled.
Yes, for example, the word principal was the wrong, it's the correct
Wrong
word,
version.
but it's the wrong version of the word principal. We've corrected that.
Yeah. Okay. All right, council, so this is one that's for reconsideration. There was already done a first reading and a second reading before, so. And this is something that's kind of just clarifying if somebody does abstain, and that it would be a no vote. So over all my years I've been here, and I know previously before, whenever somebody did abstain, it ended up being or even if they were silent and didn't, speak to vote, it was always as a yes vote. We've had people, we've had to have members, council members abstain, from voting because it was a conflict of an interest. But this is just clarifying if it's not a conflict of interest, and if you abstain, then it's going to be a no vote. Since we have a unique charter where it always takes 4 votes for any kind of action.
2.
So if you have somebody that's abstaining, then you're not having action, which isn't fair for the majority of a council that is wanting to approve something that one person can hold up the majority.
2 points, because I was the one that brought this up last December, trying to, get to some compromise, which obviously failed. But the opportunity for abstention is in our city charter, and it's in there for a reason. It has been used in the past. Probably there was some consternation probably at that time, but it is a valid tool that is used nationwide, even in our federal Congress. I don't think there's any reason to change that opportunity to have it, but I think it is a little bit, how do I say it politely, disingenuous and hypocritical. The cynic in me says, because what you're trying to do now is doing exactly what council did for the vote of Measure 91. You're trying to remove the will of the voters who voted in favor of Measure 91 by changing the rules after the fact by saying somebody cannot use the opportunity to abstain to block some obviously overreach on council on whatever the issue may be. So I'm obviously not in favor of changing the ground rules.
Okay, any other comments?
I would agree with those statements.
And I don't think it's just so much as this particular issue. It has really set a precedent for this type of action taking place from a counselor holding up a decision from the council.
It's not a precedent because it has been used in the past.
But it has been in other cities, but a lot of them don't have the charter like ours that you have to have 4 votes for any
But
action.
with our charter in place the way it is, it has been used in exactly the same way it could be used again. It already has been, years ago. Dick is aware of it.
4 abstaining would be a no vote.
Yes.
No, abstaining means I'm essentially not here.
Right.
Which in fact makes it a no vote.
Right, but
No,
what,
it doesn't make it a no vote. Because if we have 3 no votes and 3 yes votes, it's a tie vote.
Right.
If I'm not here, you have 2 no votes and 3 yes votes, you don't have a tie.
Right,
right.
exactly.
So I've been here for 20 years and I've never seen that used.
Well, I've been here 25,
So if it was used, very rare.
very rare. It's been used.
Right. So,
But it is a valid tool, and I think it has its place, and that's why it's in the city charter. And changing the city charter requires a vote of the general populace.
but city charter doesn't mention about
That's
abstaining.
true.
You're
That's
talking
true.
about the code.
That's true, but the
And
net effect is changing the city charter.
Right, which is a code, so this would be just clarifying that in that code. But it's not in our charter saying that you could abstain.
Well, let me weigh in. I have no opinion about whether this is what you choose to do or not do. The charter provides that the council is to adopt rules for the conduct of its business. You currently have a rule, which is an ordinance, that says that if you are silent in an abstention, it is counted as a yes. If you deliberately say you're abstaining, it's not counted. That is a rule, an ordinance. So how you classify the effect of an abstention is not in the charter, it's in your own ordinance or rules. If you choose to change how that is done, you may. You're not changing the charter.
Understood.
But again, I'm not trying to suggest you either should or should not take a particular vote on a matter.
This just clarifies it more on that.
It doesn't clarify it, it changes it.
Well, then
So
it,
don't say clarify, say change.
okay, then it changes it, Counselor.
Yes, and I have checked.
Okay, that's fine. You have that right too.
But taking the other side for a moment, if you have 4 people on the council who want to do something,
Yep.
and a person who is opposed, who would have voted no, but just keeps the majority from being able to vote that way. I mean, that creates a problem for the system as well. I don't think we were put here to play games or to, win at any cost. We win and we lose, and generally, we get along with each other in the process. I mean, I'm the far right-wing guy, and I count you all as friends. That doesn't mean that I'm going to agree with you. And there will be times, because I'm the guy who is adamant for business, many of you aren't. And that means I lose. I think that's kind of the way life is. But it's the system that needs played out. I would move to adopt.
I think it basically, to
There's a
take the-
motion. Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Okay.
To take the opposite tack again is again, I see my job as to doing what I believe is in the best interest of the entire community. And this is a tool that will, at the most extreme, would make us all get back together and say, okay, can we rethink this problem and come up with a different way of getting to yes, so that we're not at loggerheads. And this is, again, a It's a tool used nationally, has been for many, many, many generations, going back probably 100-plus years. I see no problem with it, and if it means that we have to come back to discussing things, TPMs might be a classic example of that. We have until the end of the year to come up with TPM, so I don't see any problem with keeping it the way it is because it has not been used on an ordinance yet, other than way back when. So we're trying to kill something that hasn't happened yet because of there's a innate fear that it might be used, and I don't think that's the correct way to make policy.
But it has been used. I mean, you've
Years
used
ago.
it a couple times already.
Not to work on, not to do an ordinance.
You had just abstained off of another.
Right, but it had nothing to do with an ordinance. That was just something, talking points in the working session, it had nothing to do with an ordinance. Just trying to give direction to council.
Right. But there's many times, though, and mostly, when it comes to this issue, we'll never ever all agree. So, but it's still not fair for the majority to hold up the majority of a council in making that decision because one person would abstain. That's not fair. You work through issues, and you try to build a consensus. If you can't get a consensus, it's not fair for one person to hold up the majority.
But Mayor, that's effectively what happened when we passed the ban over and above the will of the voters in Measure 91.
That has nothing to do with the state. Clearly, as you know, adopted rules that cities could go back out to the voters this November. That's
We were the
all.
only city that passed it that turned around and said, we don't think that you knew what you were doing, therefore we're going to ban it. That was your words.
So, but is there anything wrong with that, going back out for a second look? Let the voters have a second look.
Yes, since they already voted in favor of it the first time.
But
I strongly
Excuse
agree
me.
that was.
This
Yeah.
has been voted on a number of times. Now, if some of us are terrible, awful ogres because we say it ought to be voted on again, I would point out to you, then the people who kept bringing it up over and over and over are those same scumbag, terrible, awful ogres. I mean, it came back. It had been put down to defeat a number of times, and it came back over and over and over. So at some point, if it's reasonable that when you lose, you bring it back if you like something, if you don't like it, it should also be reasonable to bring it back. I mean,
So who are the scumbags?
well, I said, if it is awful that that four of us decided it should be banned until the people vote on it.
So you're
If
the
bringing
one,
it back up for a vote is awful, it came back up for a vote from people marijuana lost over and over until it finally won. So the people who brought it back are just in the same pot of sticks that the people now say we're in.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think so.
I mean, it's the same exact problem. If it's sacrosanct once it's been voted on, then there should be no whatever it is when you bring it up again, because marijuana lost here. It's lost in Ward 3 every single time it's come up.
Bill?
Like some of the other issues that come around, I'm really struggling with this. The process is, the issue comes up, you vote, you don't win them all, you don't lose them all, but you move on. But the process is that you vote. I don't think the process is to try and find a way to obstruct the process. We've talked about this issue before, and somebody mentioned that, this is the kind of, insert expletive here, that goes on in Washington DC that people are so tired of. And maybe to a certain extent at the state level, but I don't see a need for, you can be politically correct and call it, it's a process, it's used and so forth. You can call it politicking, you can call it game playing, you can call it anything you want, pick your adjective. The point is, I don't think that the intent is to, again, politic or play games or whatever, so that you obstruct the process, or, win at all costs, or I'm going to take my ball and go home. Again, you can go on and on and on. There was a suggestion floated at one of the discussions about having the mayor vote on every issue. And I don't know if that takes a change to the charter. Quite honestly, that seems like a better system. You know, we're going to have an issue here that, you know, there's going to be some people pretty happy and there's going to be some people pretty upset with the outcome of this vote, assuming that we do vote tonight. And I don't think it has to be that way. An easy solution is to either have 5 counselors or 7 counselors, or let the mayor vote, and that issue just doesn't come up. You eliminate the possibility of the tie. I shouldn't say you eliminate the possibility of the tie. Somebody could be gone and the mayor can vote, you still have 6 people. I understand that. I mean, it's...
So this is just amending the current ordinance on identifying, you know, abstentions. So previous counselors made this rule, and that's like we've always heard, when it comes to an ordinance or a code, future councils can change it. So this just sort of identifies what abstention is going to be as a no vote, so we can be able to get down to business, because we do have to get through time, place, and manner. And if we start getting just abstaining on everything, we're never going to get anything done. And I would hate to see future councils doing that also. And future councils can immediately reverse it back, take it out if they want. But changing the charter is a lot more difficult process to go to. So, but it, you know, once it's adopted, it could be a year, next year, or if new councilors come on board, they can reverse it at any time. It just takes 4 votes. But this gets us through some, you know, the time, place, and manner too, that we can get stuff done. Dick?
Yeah, there's a good reason why the mayor only votes when there's a tie. I was mayor once, and I was to begin with, I was a minority mayor. And if I had had the vote, I would have been overridden. You shouldn't have to subject the mayor to that kind of abuse, let's say. So it makes sense to me to have the mayor break a tie and otherwise not have to vote. Now, as to the thing that we're talking about tonight, I think there's an advantage to be able to, and I'm kind of struggling for the right adjective, block a, let me say, unfortunate motion or ordinance. And I think that what Ray and I have been doing is similar to one of the prerogatives that the mayor has. And that is to be able to veto an ordinance. And when I was mayor, I did veto. I don't know if it was an ordinance or a resolution. I believe it was an ordinance. Because the council, in their wisdom, was following the suggestion of the city manager at that time that we give away our ambulances. And I vetoed it. A couple of meetings later, I missed the only meeting I missed when I was mayor. And the council overrode my veto in their wisdom. Well, it was early in the term of when I was mayor. And as it turned out, those of you who know about our ambulance system, we do have ambulances in our fire department. And it turned out that before I was through being mayor, I convinced the council in their wisdom that they ought to take those ambulances back. And we did. And on top of that, we fired the city manager. So I think there is an advantage to being able to stop an unfortunate motion. So I certainly hope that we're able to keep this particular ordinance intact. And I plan to abstain when we consider this motion.
Okay, any more discussion?
Call question.
Okay, all right, the motion's before you for adopting this ordinance and concerning voting abstentions. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No,
I abstain.
May I do a roll call, please?
Yes.
Olson is abstaining.
I abstain.
Collins,
yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kellum,
Yes.
Kopsinski,
No,
Coburn,
Yes.
4 yes.
Okay, all right, motion carried. So 4-1 with 1 abstain.
4 yes, 1 no, 1 abstention.
Yeah. Okay, all right, thank you, council. And it, as I said, it can be changed at any time, so if that's the will of the council. Okay, next, Jim, you wanted to mention about to do public comment for that second reading. That's-
The law provides that increases in fees, that the public has to be given an opportunity to comment. I think you meet the requirement when you have business from the public, and the ordinance in question is not a fee, it's a tax. So I don't think it's really required, but I would suggest that our record be kept as clean as possible, and that the mayor ask if there is anyone else who wishes to comment specifically on the ordinance. The ordinance that the council is considering tonight is the ordinance to it's an ordinance to send to the voters the question of whether or not the ban that the council has imposed thus far on recreational sales should be continued. And then the other item you are considering, and Sean, correct me if I get the ordinance and resolution part wrong, but the other item that you are considering is simply whether you want to impose a 3% tax if the voters choose to overturn the ban so that recreational sales is legal in Albany. You are not considering tonight time, place, and manner restrictions in this ordinance. You may get into it in later discussions, but that's not what you would be calling for comment on right now. So I would request that you open it again for public comment on the two matters I've discussed, which is the putting the tax to the voters in the event that the ban is overturned, and allowing and putting the referendum, if you will, to the voters in November. Sean, you're giving me the look. Have I got them wrong?
That's a separate,
Well, the first document is going to be a resolution. It's going to be referring the ordinance that was adopted last November to the voters in
Right.
November. So that's just a resolution. The second would be an ordinance imposing a 3% tax on the sale of recreational marijuana in the event the ban is overturned in November. So I think in what Jim is talking about is ORS 294, which requires if there's any new fee or fee increase that the public have an opportunity to speak. It doesn't have to be a public hearing, but it's just an opportunity to be heard. And I do agree that business from the public meets that requirement. I think that's the only ordinance that really
Right.
falls under that statute.
I'm just suggesting an abundance of caution and citizen participation, that if there's comments on, and we're really talking about the fee, if there's comments on the fee, that people come forward now and raise it again, with the mayor's permission.
Okay, yeah. So it's not a public hearing, but we will accept public comment on those 3 items.
You're really only
Yeah.
receiving public comment on the question of the tax.
yeah.
Okay.
Maria
At
Graham
this
again,
point.
and I just have one question. I would like to know what the council plans to do with this 3% tax when the ban is overturned.
That needs to be, first of all, approved by the voters. From there, then that'll be looking at setting policy of how the tax is going to be implemented and where to be appropriated for which department, however.
So we're just making sure we get a tax.
So, yeah.
So,
Right.
Your Honor, could-
This is going to the voters. They get to decide whether we're having a tax.
Correct, but we have no idea what we're going to
Your
spend
Honor,
on.
point of order,
Is that
point of
right?
order.
Yeah.
Let's have the city attorney address this again, rather than bounce this off the wall. It was explained to us once before that there are some specific restrictions on what that money can be used for.
Not on this 3%.
Not on the
Not on
city
this
tax.
one?
Not
All
on
right, I
3%.
stand corrected.
That
Thank
would
you.
be the state's tax that they have. So they're 17%, only 10% goes to cities, of that tax they
Based on
bring.
population.
This is totally a separate, this would be a city tax on top of it.
And the public comment is not respectfully an opportunity for the public to question the council. It's an opportunity for the public to comment. I would assume that if the council has revenue from tax, it will go through the budget process and decide how best to spend it. That's not something you need to give an answer to.
Okay. Anyone else that would like to comment on the tax? Yeah, Trey?
And first name Trey, last name Moore. I think he already has my address and stuff. This is going to be quick. I do hope that you guys put this on the ballot measure to be voted for because we can really use the 3% tax for recreational and stuff.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, is that it? Okay. Okay, so with that, then on page 8 is the second reading of the ordinance. So Jim?
It's an ordinance of the City of Albany imposing a 3% tax on the sale of marijuana items by a marijuana retailer and referring ordinance.
So you want to read what the question might be, would be? The question on page 13?
I will if I'm directed to by the council. It's not required in the title of the ordinance.
If you don't want to do it, don't do it.
It's not a question. I want to do what the council wants me to do.
Okay, let's not do it.
That's on.
I'll read it. Shall the Albany impose a tax on the sale of marijuana items by a marijuana retailer within the city limits? That's the question we're voting on.
What page are you on, Dick?
13.
Well,
13?
he's talking about the resolution. We have that, that's the next item, Dick, is that resolution. So this would be just the ordinance. Jim read it the second time, and council, what would you like to do with this item?
Move to have it read the second time in title only.
No, it's already been read the
That's right.
second time. Yeah, because we read it first on Monday.
That's right.
Yeah.
Move for the adoption of the ordinance, I think that's what we
Second.
need to do now.
Okay, and any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. All right.
And the next matter then is we're suggesting the resolution format on page 10. Sean, I'm counting on you to correct me if I'm mistaken on anything, but this will be the resolution then that will call for the vote. It sets forth the ballot title, which Councilor Olson just gave the question on.
Okay,
That's probably all I need to say.
all right.
Move adoption of the resolution.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. And then next would be referring to the electors. Did you have anything to say on that one, Jim?
I don't, it's required.
Okay. This is just as a requirement with state law, putting it to the voters.
Move adoption of the resolution on page 15.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
I would-
Yes.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Go ahead.
No, Ray?
Everybody knows I wear my heart on my sleeve on this particular issue, and notwithstanding some of the concerns about how the ballot is written and whether it's a yes or a no, I have no problems whatsoever with the way it's written because it says simply, shall the city of Albany prohibit recreational in the city of Albany? And the answer is no, they should not prohibit it. And I think that's pretty straightforward. I don't have any problems with it.
I
Okay,
certainly hope you're right, but I think it would be far better to have it so people can vote, yes, we approve marijuana in the city of Albany.
Well, there's going to be, how do I put it politely, a very spirited campaign this fall to vote no on this. So
Yeah.
I have no problem with it being no.
well, and there's many cities that have it written the same way,
And-
too, that, you know,
Does the
shall the
city
city
require
prohibit.
it?
I
The reason
noticed-
it's written in the negative is because the League of Oregon Cities advised cities and counties to do it this way because federal law still prohibits the use of marijuana, and they advise cities and counties not to put something on a ballot that says they're allowing something that's illegal under federal law
Okay,
still.
makes
So that's
sense.
the reason it's in the negative. That's the only reason that they wanted to do it, so.
Are any other cities voting on this?
Yeah,
Lots
yeah.
of them,
Okay.
lots of them, yeah. Yes,
in all of
There are
Lynn
a lot of
County.
other ones that have prohibitions and
yes.
they're voting on it.
This probably isn't a fair question, but just in case you happen to know, is Lynn County, Brownsville, Lebanon, and Sweet Home all having a similar measure on the
Millersburg,
ballot?
Tangent.
Yes,
Tangent.
Lynn, yeah.
Yep, Millersburg,
And,
Scioto.
and I know Lynn County looks like this. I haven't seen Brownsville or Sweet Home. so-
Brownsville already had voted on it as a no, and it did not pass in that community. Mhm.
So it didn't
Yeah.
pass.
Didn't
Wait.
pass. I mean,
So that allows
it's
marijuana?
banned. No, the ban passed.
The council, correct me,
Yeah.
Sean, if I'm wrong, but the council can impose the ban without a vote if the voters in the community did not pass the legalization of it.
By 55% or more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Brownsville went back out again, asking the voters, and I think that was, is that sometime last year, I believe it was?
And to answer your question too, Counselor Olson, a lot of the cities east of the Cascades, the voters voted by more than 55% on a no vote, and they're not required to put the vote, or the question to the people for a vote. They can do it just by council adoption of an ordinance or a resolution to ban it, so.
I was under the impression we were the only city where the voters said, yes, we want marijuana, and the council said, no, we're banning it, and so we have to vote.
Part of that may be true. I wasn't aware of what Trey had said earlier, but a lot of cities have to vote on it. If you fall under 55%, if you voted no, but it's less than 55% no, then if you want to ban it, then you have to put it in front of the voters in November. So Albany falls in that category. But there's several other cities and counties that do as well.
Well, yes and no. Albany didn't vote no, they voted yes, and they
Right,
still
right.
banned it. So there's a little distinction in language, I
I
think,
see.
so.
Okay.
Except for Ward 3.
Ward 3 voted it down.
But the city as a total, 1 and 2 voted for it, Ward 3 didn't.
Yeah,
But
and
they
it-
didn't
it
carry the city.
Barely
No, I
passed in
understand.
2, though. It was very super close in 2.
I
Yeah.
just want to say that I do agree with what some of the audience has said, is that so many times a yes vote does mean a no. In the past, it has been done, and it's really confusing, and I think it's unfair. So I just want to go on record as saying that hopefully this is as clear as it can be, and that it's very understandable. It seems to be, but I don't like that type of wording either, where yes means no, no means yes. So I just want to go on record saying.
That generally happens at the Secretary of State's office.
Yep.
Yep, Bill, did you have a question still? No?
I think 10 minutes ago, I had the same question Ray did, so I got answered.
Okay. All right, okay, there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. All right, council, we got through that this evening, and next you have a consent calendar. And if there isn't any items to be pulled off this evening, I'll entertain a motion.
Move for adoption of consent calendar.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. And let's see, next we have award of a contract. This is professional services agreement for the Albany Municipal Airport projects. And Jeff, is that you? I don't see Chris here.
Unfortunately, it
Yes.
is, even though I don't know anything about it. This is Chris's item. She gave me some notes, if council has any questions. She's out of town at a conference right now. But the bottom line on this is a process that we're required to go through by the FAA. We went through this process previously, and we ended up, interestingly, with the same consultant being the successful candidate, and as we've had in the past. So it's really business as usual moving forward. She gave me a lot of details. If you have questions, I can see if the answers are on the sheet.
Okay, questions?
I do.
Yeah, Bessie?
And this is probably just really clear to others, but if it's a 90-10 local match, 193.5 is the local match of 21.5? Is that correct?
Yes, it looks like it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. It just looked a little odd, but, okay.
Yeah,
Just
it's
wanted to
usually
make
always
sure.
matching for any of the FAA grants, so.
You had the two together.
Question? Yeah.
Take the
Uh-huh.
numbers.
Were there other responders?
Yeah.
There was one other. Let's see, so, going to my notes.
Yeah, that's right.
So we had 2 firms respond. Let's see.
Yeah, usually we have that printout that shows the bidders.
She had said that both the firms were qualified, but Precision has the larger presence locally. Javiation was the other one. It's a qualification-based selection process, and as they went through that, Precision Approach had scored higher.
Okay, and building off of that, in response to Ray's comment, when you use the qualification-based selection process, which the state requires us to do in hiring consultants, you don't get the price until you negotiate with whoever the best qualified is. This last meeting, when we were looking at the League of Oregon Cities legislative agenda, we're going to try to get that overturned, so price is a consideration. But when you're hiring professional service contracts, you don't see the other person's price unless you can't agree with the first choice. That's a process I've objected to for 20 years. But at least the league is going to address it this year. So with that, I would move that we authorize the requested action on page 40. Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. All right, so report, and this one would be on the marijuana time, place, and manner. Is that you, Sean?
I think I've been elected to be the starting point of it anyway. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, exactly. So before you tonight is a draft, and I stress that word, draft ordinance, dealing with time, place, and manner regulations.
Is that in the folder?
It's in your yellow folder.
Should have been your yellow folder.
Everybody have them now?
Yeah.
Okay. So, at our last work session, the council had requested that staff come back with an ordinance that mirrored map 3 of the maps that you've been presented in the past. And so, tonight, the ordinance you have before you, or draft ordinance, I hope does just that. What this ordinance does is it places a limitation on all recreational uses of marijuana. And again, I'll stress that it's only the recreational uses at this point in the way the ordinance is drafted. And it mirrors what you saw in map 3. For example, we've removed the industrial exceptions that were applicable to the medical marijuana. We've also redefined how the city would measure 300 feet. It will be from property boundary to property boundary, not from boundary to a zone on a particular lot. So with that and some wording in the whereas clauses, that is basically what you have before you tonight of what map 3 would look like in a text form. And so I believe that staff, Bob and Jeff have some other maps tonight that you requested as well. And finally, we would also like to know, after you discuss it, whether or not you would like staff to come back with an ordinance that also includes medical marijuana, because there was confusion with the staff and myself on whether or not that was requested last time. So I did not include it in the ordinance because I believe that was the consensus. But if I'm incorrect on that, let me know and we will modify the ordinance to suit what you do.
We had a couple of counselors that expressed a desire to consider the same restrictions with medical, but there were not 4 counselors who directed. And so we went with what previously 4 counselors had advocated or that they were interested in. But of course, the reason we give it to you as a draft is so that you can change it if it's not the way you want it.
Yeah, I placed on everybody's, I didn't have 2 more thought starters, just for talking about TPMs, and then we see this proposed ordinance. I didn't expect it to come in this kind of a form, but it kind of reinforces some of the things that I brought, that I have on these talking points. So I'm going to wing down through these so everybody's on the same page. I gave a copy to everybody. Some of them directly applicable to what's in the proposed ordinance. I guess my question is, two major points that I'll address is what is intrinsically wrong with map 2, basically why, I'd like to hear some articulate reasoning from councilors as to why there's a need to exempt industrial, to remove the exemption from industrial, and what is sacrosanct about 300 feet? Why not 100 feet or 200 feet or 250 feet? Obviously, that line is just an arbitrary line pulled out of the air. I'm trying to figure out, get my mind around why that line is 300 feet and not anything less. I would say, I could easily go along and say, well, okay, make it 250 feet, I'm good with that, not a problem. Because it affects more than just retail, it affects potential operations for wholesale growers, et cetera, that could apply. And those types of operations literally have considerably more security than dispensaries and recreational sales, because public can't go into them, period. So I think it's almost a meaningless number to have those. I even put on the back page, or on the bottom of this first page in the back half, what one community in Colorado has come up with for odor management, which might be something to consider, because that has come up in discussion before. Notwithstanding that we said it's okay to have some pigs in the neighborhood, but for a couple of weeks we can't have some odor from marijuana. I'm struggling with that a little bit, but the biggest thing in my mind is, why is it necessary to remove the exemption from industrial? And why is it necessary to have this arbitrary line of 300 feet? Why not 250 or 200?
Well, because remember, Counselor, 300 feet, which is mirroring off of what we've had in our code for probably over 15 years or more, is the same as adult entertainment.
And these are two radically different entities and business concepts. And again, I don't understand why 300 feet is and we carved out an exemption for that for the dispensaries. And there has been absolutely no problems with the dispensaries being within 300 feet, the one that is. So why is it necessary to have 300 feet now?
Well, that can always be changed in the future.
Well,
You never know.
you have actually gone on record and said that the reason that you wanted it was because of the Bermuda Triangle. I'll bring it right up. And said that you did not want that location to be allowed to be recreational simply because of the visibility for customer, or for the public coming into the community. Had nothing to do with the kids. It was for that reason only. And for that reason only, I don't think that's a valid reason to deny the opportunity of somebody to have a legal business.
It's not just kids. Kids will be driving by, too. You know, kids will be going by the area, going to the restaurant. This is something
They're
that,
going to be driving by any place that has recreational marijuana.
this is a whole new environment that is going to just take a while for people to transition to.
It's
So if you-
transitioned
if
just
you-
beautifully in all the other communities in Oregon that have it
Well,
currently,
no,
including Corvallis.
There's been some issues, so, I mean, we're just transitioning into it. There's no big
But
rush.
I think you are, as the city attorney has mentioned, if we're doing over and above what the state requires, that we're inviting the potential for a lawsuit when there's no need to do so. And as Jim has mentioned on a couple occasions, do we really want to be the tip of a spear on some of these things? I don't think so.
Well, and I don't think, and there's other communities that have put it in their zoning, so this is not any different than many other communities
So,
have.
why 300 feet that is intrinsic to recreational marijuana?
Because we did it for adult entertainment,
not-
we're
that's
just
not
doing
the
it the
issue.
same, so.
Well, that's the issue she picked.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah, Rich.
I mean, realistically, the framers of the original ability to have people vote on this picked 1,000 feet from a school. Now, if it's quite 300 feet, well, we could make it 1,000 feet, and I think that would be completely defendable. I don't think that's necessary, but the 1,000 feet they picked it for probably one or two or three reasons. One, it's something that the federal government said, well, if you, quote, protect children, unquote, we won't come after you. And that's an edict from the federal government. Secondly, if you say 1,000 feet, you get a lot more people to vote for it, I think. You get the soccer mom who was worried about it, well, it's 1,000 feet. And of course, third, that same 1,000 feet is the distance that if you are closer than that to a school selling other kinds of drugs, you're talking about you receive gigantically different kinds of penalties. Now, I don't think 1,000 feet is necessary, but I think that's just as reasonable as 200. It actually said so in the original document when it came to the ballot measure. So, you know, what the distance is, we talked about 300 feet. I think there are enough people to vote for 300 feet. As far as the spot on the quote triangle, the reason they could go in there was because it was dual zoning. There is, in fact, children available at closer than 300 feet because of the dual zoning. If you go by just what the zone is. So, I mean, you know, people want to go get blasted, let them go get blasted. You want to do it at home, you can still do it at home. What the bottom line is if you want to protect kids, protect kids. And if you don't, well, I mean, I'm opposed to not going the extra mile to protect kids. I mean, we have a whole lot of ways that people can change the way they're feeling with chemicals and, you know, this is not, we're not doing this instead of something else, we're doing it in addition to. And it's not like it's not changing things, according to the district attorney's office. I mean, DUI, alcohol is down. DUI, marijuana is way up. And that's even with a lot of people, according to them, a lot of people, when they get busted, they have been doing both, and what they prosecute them on is alcohol, because they've got an easy way to point to them and say, okay, here's the standard, this is what your blood came back. They don't have that same easy way to do it with marijuana. It's not like it's, you know, and of course, the MIP with marijuana is now way up. So, according to the Tory Lynn. I mean, it's not like it's not having an effect. I mean, people say, oh, gee, we've never had a problem with it. Well, there's maybe not the problem you've known about. I mean, marijuana has been around a long time, and it's never been, I know there are people who'd like to say, gee, no one's ever died from it. Well, you know, you can believe that if you want. Frankly, excuse me, point of order.
Please, no comments.
I mean, people do stupid stuff when they're high on stuff, and marijuana is no exception to that. Thousands of people have been killed because of that.
No comments, please. Yeah, we've heard
Unless you'd
the
like to
arguments.
leave.
Yeah. So, yeah, Ray?
Since I'm gonna put him on the spot, but we have a police captain in the back of the room, Jeff, could you address Councilor Kellum's comments that marijuana DUIs and MIPs are way up since we've had medical dispensaries, I guess. We don't have recreational sales, but have they been up and we're having real problems in Albany?
That doesn't mean that they would have been limited to Albany to get the marijuana. And you're talking about people who are, this is according to Tory Lynn, people who would have got it and were in school, in Albany schools, or, no, excuse me, in Lynn County schools.
Because there's edibles, too.
Yeah.
We're talking about Albany now, not Lynn County.
No, we're talking about a problem.
Yeah, I apologize, I don't have any stats
I sprung
with
it on
me.
him, I surprised him, I sandbagged him here, so it's.
So, I mean, I can only talk anecdotally about the situation, not specifics. You know, we have probably seen a little bit of a rise in the number of marijuana-involved incidents, but I can't give you specific stats that it's, you know, we've increased the Deweys by 20% or MIPs by 10%. But I think Rich's comments that there's been some increase is accurate with the law change, but I can't give you specifics.
So are you measuring these in hundreds of events or thousands of events?
Not in the city of Albany, no. I mean, maybe 100 total when you add up, you know, the MIPs and Deweys and, you know, other associated crimes. We've had some thefts that have increased, burglaries that have increased because of marijuana. So when you add them all up, you know,
As a comparison, how would that compare to the alcohol issues of the same?
We're not talking about alcohol.
I mean, if you had 100 problems with marijuana, how many would you have via alcohol?
Yeah, it's
10
hard.
times that much or more?
Oh,
100 times more?
well, probably not hundreds, but probably more. We have more incidents
Okay, I'm
involving
gonna go.
alcohol currently than.
But it's we don't have the measurements on it, you know, when somebody is impaired, then you're just putting arresting them under a DUII where, because it's such a cumbersome process to prove that it's marijuana. So we'll never really get the true numbers of, you know, what those cases are. I do know Benton County, the sheriff there has told me that they've had a big rise, so, over in Benton County of marijuana DUIs.
Well, Mayor, to that point, it was Tory Lynn who told me what it was, and he's in charge of juvenile. And he would be the guy who knows. If you want to know, I mean, you know, he works at the county.
I'm not worrying about the county, I've got Albany to worry about.
Yeah.
That's why we're here. Thank you, Jeff, sorry for putting you on the
Thank you,
spot.
Captain. You're welcome.
Back to the 300 feet. Since every single property owner, literally around every school, can be growing their own marijuana, how is that 300-foot rule or a 200-foot rule or a 1,000-foot rule going to be enforced? Are we going to have cops knocking on doors? Can I snoop in your backyard and see what's there? I mean, the proximity to the school it's a meaningless line, so I would suggest something less than 250 feet rather than 300, especially for the wholesalers, growers, producers that are, and keeping the industrial exemption, and not removing it, because, again, I just think that we are intentionally trying to reduce the available properties that are potentially usable for recreational marijuana to such a small degree that it is literally using code to stifle any recreational sales in the city.
Well, Ray, what's special about 250 feet?
Nothing.
Why not 294 feet or 377 feet? I mean,
I'm just trying to say, let's do something, you know, other than it's something that's always been done that way when it's not necessary.
What's the difference?
if 300 feet is not necessary, well, then 250 isn't, or 3 isn't. I mean, if it's not necessary.
I agree, it isn't necessary at all, but we're.
You're not agreeing with me saying it's unnecessary, but.
Well, you know, and the 300 feet, you know, and I do think, I thought there was, or we need to consider too, is whether you want to still exempt, you know, the industrial. But the 300 feet, try it out. If it does not seem to, you know, fit, it can always be changed later. But at least it kind of gives, if you can get time, place, and manner, everything adopted before it goes to the voters, well, the folks that maybe are opposed to marijuana dispensaries might vote yes, because they're going to know that time, place, and manner is in place, and that going 300 feet is going to keep it out of neighborhoods. That was the one reason, too, was keeping it out of the neighborhood, since there's so many, you know, we've got
But
little...
individuals can grow their own in neighborhoods right now, and you
But
can't
it's
stop
not,
it.
that's not visible compared to a storefront that could, like I said, we can't, we can't regulate the content of what a business puts in front of their building. If they want to just be putting marijuana shop, they can put marijuana shop. Do you want to have that next door to your, somebody might not want that next door to them. You might, Ray, but somebody might not want that next door.
It's on the main drags in Corvallis and everything else.
But
and
it
there
could
hasn't been
affect
any
their
problems.
property values too. So really, putting in zoning in place, we're looking out for people's property values. So,
I think you're intentionally trying to zone out potential business
no,
and drive
we are
business away from
protecting
Corvallis.
neighborhoods' property values is what we're looking at.
But let the neighbors decide that.
Well, you can't when we're having to do it in our zoning. It's a part of the zoning and placement of businesses.
But we
So-
allowed Canna Kitchen to do it within 300 feet, so why is there a problem with having?
We did it to Ken, it was in the industrial, but actually because it was all the political pressure, and that was the only
Son of a
reason
gun.
it was putting on the political pressure to exempt Canna, because,
So they wouldn't have to move.
yeah.
Right, so, and there has not been any problems with them there. Their neighbors all agreed and signed statements that we have no problems with them being there. They have not been a problem in the community, so why do you think it's going to be any different with a
The
recreational
Canna
store?
Kitchen could sell their business tomorrow, and a new owner could come in, and then there could be a problem. And then all of a sudden, we could have neighbors coming to us, well, why did you allow this to be in the zoning? That's everything we have for zoning, is we're to be looking at building a livable community. And so we have to look out for people's property values and making, great neighborhoods. This is just a piece of it, and maybe there won't be any problems if recreational is approved by the voters, and then it can always be changed down the road.
A question for the city attorney, which one, I don't know, it doesn't matter which one, I guess. How stringent or how restrictive can we get before it crosses the line in being unreasonable?
Let me take a crack and save you from falling on the sword. The legislature says you can adopt time, place, and manner restrictions, but until we have courts telling us, giving us guidelines about what they really mean by that, it's impossible to say for sure. I will say, however, that if the effect of your restrictions is to effectively preclude recreational sales, and I don't know whether, I'm just saying that if the effect of the restrictions was to effectively preclude recreational sales, and the ban was lifted by the voters, I think that those regulations would be very difficult to defend.
Thank you. And just
So you have to judge for yourself whether or not you're doing that. And so you look at where exemptions exist or don't exist, you look at the measurement distances, what you're measuring from. So you can have restrictions, but you cannot legally, in my judgment, preclude recreational sales if the voters overturn it.
And I think just looking at those three maps, the options 1, 2, and 3, obviously make it so that that crosses that line. Having said that, city attorney multiple times has said that he really didn't want to get put on the spot to trying to come up with, these are the only things that you folks can do. We kind of forced him and said, come up with some ideas. Well, then all of a sudden we've glommed onto, those are the only 3 ideas we can use. Like he said multiple times, we can do almost anything we want as long as it's reasonable. These were just some thought starters, but all of a sudden we've hung on to this and this. I would like to address staff to come up with a similar type of a proposed potential ordinance for option number 2 with the language.
Wouldn't
So
it simply be a change in the measurement of the feet?
It would be, with the change to say like 250 feet or whatever, leaving the industrial exemption in there, to see what the difference in the language would be, so that we have a basis to compare something rather than just looking at these not absolutely 100% accurate maps.
So,
Question. For Sean. This is the first time I've seen this, obviously, tonight, so I'm trying to read through it and listen to the debate. Can you point me into the direction of this industrial exemption or the?
There is.
And let me kind of give you a little more
Yeah.
help. Getting back to what Ray has said, when we talked a week ago Monday, the map 3, I understand the 300 feet, but it also took away some of the locations in some industrial areas?
So what MAP 3 did and what this ordinance does is removes the industrial exception. The way the code's currently written, it prohibits medical marijuana activities within so many feet of residential in different areas. However, there's an industrial exception
Except for
carved out in
residential.
in the text. This just
Right.
removes that language.
Where does it remove that? I don't see it addressed.
It just doesn't include it. So it's, yeah, it's not in there.
So
We
then,
just took it
getting
out.
back, we're kind of focusing on maps, but with what Ray was saying, if we've favored more of the map 2, we would have to add some language that would address the industrial zone?
I believe, and I'll let Jeff correct me on this if I'm wrong, because I didn't prepare the map. I believe map 2 mirrors what the current code says now. So it's already in our code. If we do nothing but keep the code the way it is, that's what our map 2 would look like.
And I guess my question is, what was so
Right.
intrinsically wrong with that map?
Bob's coming up, he may clarify something here.
Well, I think
Gonna hit you from all 3 sides tonight here.
I just want to.
Use the microphone, please.
Sure. The map 2 that was shown at the prior meetings was really focused on, we were looking at dispensaries and recreational sales. So I just want to make that point. We're not talking about all the other
Right.
commercial marijuana uses.
Right. And the code as it stands now only addresses recreational sales and medical dispensaries. There's nothing else in our code that talks about the other uses right now.
So this is what, council, this is what we asked Sean to bring us back, was putting the ordinance into the ordinance format and language. So, I mean, this isn't for taking action on it tonight unless you were wanting to, but I think we'll probably bring this back at another meeting. So, and when would you like this brought back?
We have it scheduled on August 8th.
August 8th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would still like to see it added with the same type of information presented only with the with the map 2.
I think it's fair to say that if you decrease the number, the distance requirement, or you retain the industrial exemption, you will have more possible sales locations.
Yeah, that's exactly, and the map shows that.
Right, you could do, currently you have the 300 feet, but it's measured from the zone, not the property boundary, and you have the industrial exemption. You don't have to do both. You could say the 300 feet is measured from property boundary, but we're going to retain the industrial exemption. I'm not suggesting that's what you do. I'm just saying that those, either or both of those changes from this draft will allow more locations. Either reducing the measurement, the distance requirement, and/or retaining the industrial exemption will provide more locations. Whether that's what you want and whether they're the right locations is not for me to say.
Well, and that we can take up on August 8th. And even what, if we go the route of less locations, and then if the voters pass it, we can always change and add more locations down the road. So that can always be changed later.
But I think if you intentionally try and restrict it to the point where it's obvious that there is an incredibly tight restriction to potentially zone out locations, you're just adding fuel to the fire to people to vote no on the ballot to prohibit sales.
So that we don't know. So, yeah. Jorge?
So busy.
I just,
Yeah.
I'm going to be gone on the 8th, and Marilyn just said it's not set in stone. I'd kind of like to be here for that discussion, but I do have one question. If we bring in where the zoning where they could be, does that not give them the opportunity to have kind of like all the grocery stores in one place, all of the stores and marijuana stores in one place too? Where rather than have them spread around, does it not?
Well, the way the state's regulations are now, medical dispensaries cannot be within 1,000 feet of one another. There is no such prohibition when it comes to recreational or retail establishments. The council can adopt restrictions on that as well if they choose to. So you could put in, for an example, that retail establishments cannot locate within 500 feet of another retail establishment. I'm making that number up, but as long as it's not in excess of 1,000 feet. The state said you can adopt reasonable restrictions there, but you cannot make it more than 1,000 feet from one another, so.
Just want to make one comment that as I go around, even in Corvallis and here, sometimes we might be making way too much about this, because I don't even notice, as I'm driving by, I don't even notice that the stores are there. Unless someone says, oh, by the way, there's one on this, place or whatever, and then I see the big green, cross, whatever. But I don't think it should be, all out anywhere, but still, I'm thinking that we might need to be careful of what we do, the restrictions,
Well, so if you're
That's
going to be
why Ray and
gone,
I wanted to keep our ability to say we abstain.
Well, I don't agree
So
with the
it's-
abstention at all, because that.
Hang on back to that one.
Why do you don't like that idea?
No,
But that's why
that's
we
not the
want to keep-
democratic process. But, I'm just saying that if they're there, there's not gonna be like 100 of them coming into town at one time, and
so Bessie, you're gone that whole week, that August?
I'm gone from the 5th to the 14th, yeah.
Okay,
So-
and so, in 2 weeks later, is anyone gone that week? Because I have a state, I forgot to tell you, Marilyn, I have a state meeting on that I think it's the 22nd. I will not be able to be back into town till closer till 6, so maybe we can just put it till September. There's no rush to get the time, place, and manner. We have till the what, end of December?
At least.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, because I don't think we should rush into this.
Anybody going to be gone in September?
Till end of September, first part of
end.
October.
Okay, so maybe the first part of September?
Then might.
I may be gone around September 10th. Of course, I don't matter anyway.
Yes, you do.
So,
We all do.
okay, we'll look at the calendar and,
Okay.
The first work session in September is the 12th.
okay, all right. So you're gone just the 10th or the whole week?
I may be, I don't know.
Okay, yeah,
My
Jorge?
sister wants me to go back to Michigan with her.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, just wanted to make a comment because we've been meeting as a staff many times to try to figure this out. And I know that council is struggling with coming up with information, but we're also struggling to come up with information because we're not getting clear direction what the council wants. We can come up with multiple versions, but as we meet, we just don't know what to bring up to the council because it's a moving target for us.
Yes, it
And
is.
I think Jorge is absolutely right. And one of the things you might do, which might help, don't get hung up trying to draft ordinance language. You got a staff, that's our job to do that.
Yeah.
But what you might do, and you're allowed legally to talk among less than a quorum, you know kind of where the constituencies are in this to some degree. Talk to your peers if you wish, and see if, and float some specific suggestions. And then we could test, are there 4 votes in support of in concept of those suggestions? And if there were, then staff would work at putting it in ordinance form, and if you wish, showing you a map about what it would look like. And if you give us, as Jorge is suggesting, something to shoot at, we can do a better job for you, both in terms of giving you practical maps and in terms of giving you language that you can test. And again, we have the luxury of time here, but time always seems to compress. So the more...
Well, this really helped, though. And I think...
That was our hope, that it would, to give us a starting point.
No, it did. We're used to seeing things in ordinance language. To me, it was more confusing not seeing it in the ordinance language.
And again, to clarify Councilor Coburn's comment about the industrial exemption, when we don't have the exemption listed in the revised ordinance, then the exemption doesn't exist. So we took it out simply by not reinstating it and back into the ordinance. And it's just, it's because in ordinance language, you just keep it as clean as you can, and we already had an ordinance in place, so all we had to do was tinker with it to modify it as you might direct. We don't have to create a whole new ordinance because you did this, you set the framework for it some time ago.
Okay, all right.
2 quick points, then I'll shut up. I gave everybody that piece of paper for some talking points. Look at number 7, possibility of some other ways of addressing the desire to protect kids. Maybe we could possibly ban advertisement of flavors and edibles that might be attractive to minors. That's an education thing that might go a long way to help with the kids type of thing. Then the one above it, right above it, about the visibility, and this goes to the producers and the labs I'm talking about, not the actual retail storefronts, with such tight footage zonings, because they're not open to the public, they're not going to be advertising to anyone, and restricting these businesses from operating in an industrial zone is akin to saying alcohol distributor operating in a warehouse is corrupting our kids. That's completely unreasonable.
But some people think alcohol and marijuana is apples to oranges, so we've got to come up with a balance, but, yeah. Okay.
Mayor?
Oh, yes, Jeff.
I just wanted to point out, because this is a complex issue with the 7 categories and all the different ways we can peel this onion, that I think it's really important to understand. We need to be careful that we're not inadvertently misleading unintentionally with our words. This ordinance, so right now in the AMC, there are 2 separate sections devoted to marijuana, one for medical sales and one for recreational sales. This ordinance that's here in front of you tonight only applies to the recreational sales. So when we talk about removing or including industrial exemptions, how the 300 feet is measured, this ordinance only applies to recreational sales. So if the desire is to have remove that industrial exception and modify how the 300 feet is measured, we would need to include more ordinance language that includes the medical uses, because this does not include any of the medical uses. So if that is something that the council would like to consider, or see the ordinance language that would mirror this for medical and have that come forward as a package, it would be helpful for us if we could hear that tonight and we could bring that forward to you when we do that, because this only applies to recreational.
But again, the only applying to recreational has been the specific emphatic instruction from 4 counselors in the past. Unless you're going to suggest that every counselor is going to give us a draft to write, then I need 4 counselors, at least, not in a final vote, but at least in a nodding way, say, make the instructions or the restrictions similar for medical.
I'm concerned about specifically measuring medical, 300 feet for medical facilities differently than we measure 300 feet for recreational facilities.
So maybe just to at least bring back, I mean, does that need to be a separate ordinance to that, or
We can
just
add it, we can
recreational?
write it in one ordinance with 2, it's just 2 separate sections of the code. This section that's in this only, it just would need to be expanded to include the medical.
Well,
Okay.
you're talking just about amending the way the measurement is
Right.
for medical?
For
Okay.
amending this ordinance to say recreational and medical marijuana uses and facilities.
Well, the 4 people want us to do that?
Why would you need to have a whole separate?
Not unless, if you're not going to reduce the footage, then I'm not in favor of that.
Well, hold on, just real quick to clarify, because we're saying different stuff, I think. What Jeff is saying is, his concern was the way the measurement is. So currently, medical marijuana dispensaries, we measure 300 feet from the boundary of where the dispensary is to 300 feet from the zone of residential, for example. And with the recreational, we're proposing, or I'm not saying it's in the draft, 300 feet from boundary to boundary. And what Jeff said is, he's concerned that we measure them differently. So we could amend the medical on the measurement only, but if we include medical in this ordinance and apply medical uses in this ordinance, then it's going to drastically change the way things are done, and that may be what you want, but I just want to make sure you understand that.
Well, I would like to see the ramifications of that.
But it
yes.
grandfathers in the medical
It grandfathers into dispensaries.
Right.
Only the dispensaries that are currently here, so.
But it would only include the new people,
Right.
any new people that come in.
Yeah.
You're seeing a little bit of what, we've all heard, I think, different things, because we haven't had an
Correct.
actual
So maybe somebody
direction to
can-
move forward on a specific item. The medical piece, there's other categories of uses that aren't included in the existing ordinance, and there's a lot of things that we didn't get to talking about. But if the intention, it'd just be helpful to know if the intention is, the items that we've been discussing apply only to recreational or medical, and then we can bring back the appropriate documents to support the desire or the will of the council.
So do you want staff to bring back another ordinance with adding the medical then to it? Is there nods for seeing that?
I don't think we're ready to do that.
I don't think so either.
Okay, so. Okay,
And then the last clarification, he just choice of words. This applies to all recreational uses, not just sales. You have retail sales as one of the uses, but there are 4 recreational uses. It applies to all recreational marijuana uses, period.
Well, that was my comment on item number 6 on the little packet that I passed out, because of the completely different usages of the facilities, that those distances and things aren't really applicable, because the public can't go into them.
So we're saying no thanks to processing and any of that kind of stuff.
You would if you adopted an ordinance that looked like this, you would regulate processing, wholesale, the same as you would with retail.
I was holding on to these because the conversation was going all kinds of directions, but we did create some maps. The maps show what would be the effect of the ordinance on recreational, and if it were to have the same guidelines on medical, because that's what I had heard at the last council meeting, which is different than what others heard. So we'll circulate these for you. You just have to understand that the maps represent that you're doing the same changes for recreational that you'd be doing to do those to medical. If that ends up not being the case, those maps would not be accurate. You'd have a whole nother set of maps that would need to be created to show that.
What I heard was that we don't want to look at medical at this time.
Right, but we don't have separate maps
Okay.
just for recreational, because I heard something different at the last
Yeah,
meeting
last
and
So,
didn't have time to make a whole new set of maps.
so the question is, does staff have enough information to update? I don't see a lot of changes to what we have here.
I think tonight, if I'm correct, I don't think that staff or been directed to do anything different at this
Correct, yeah,
point.
that's what I want to validate. Make sure
Right,
that we are
so
following.
we're waiting until the next work session, I believe, that we address this.
If we were to move forward with this, we would want to have an opportunity to clean up the language a little bit, because it was still in draft form for us, but, so we wouldn't want to take action on this specific ordinance, but the concepts are.
What's sometimes useful is the old days when, and this is before any of you except perhaps Floyd, when Steve Bryant would work the council through difficult choices that would be a whole bunch of sub-choices. You'd get a whiteboard and a counselor would float an idea, and you'd write that idea up there, and you'd get the list of all the ideas, and then you'd start seeing which ideas have 4 counselors who like them. Number 1, no, that's only got 2. Number 3, yeah, that's got 4. So let's move 4 over into what we might do. And then you get those lists that seem to generally have 4 votes, and then you see if they'll work together. And if they generally will, then staff's got some marching orders to give you maps, to show you what it would look like, to give you an ordinance format. And I just only suggest that it might be helpful to try to get the concepts up, and then you could decide whether or not you like it.
Well, that'd make it a real work session then.
I mean, that's just my suggestion.
okay, we'll get it scheduled then, yeah. Okay, anything else?
So these maps are variations of map 3 for possible wholesale versus possible dispensary, et cetera. I guess I didn't understand your description of this.
Map 3 previously, we were only looking at, again, with the 7 categories of uses, we were only looking at 2 categories. And so the direction that we heard was to bring back the maps that put that mindset that you were considering for dispensaries and sales to all of the other categories of uses. So yes, the concepts that were in map 3 are reflected in those maps, but it applies obviously to more categories than what we were discussing previously.
A person could process in more locations than a person could dismiss.
Yeah, it has to do with the types of activities that are allowed in different zones through the development code. For instance, Bob can probably speak to this more eloquently than I can, but growing, from a development code standpoint, we would treat growing just the same as somebody growing tomatoes. So where can somebody grow tomatoes in the city of Albany? And that might be different from where you could actually have a tomato stand selling tomatoes. And
Can't
so,
grow tomatoes in
I see.
in a commercial zone, perhaps?
Bob, can we grow tomatoes in commercial zone?
I just plain can't grow tomatoes, they're only about that tall.
It appears that the processing and production growing are basically identical.
No, they're not identical.
They've got the same
Some major
acres,
differences.
same total.
So let me explain a little bit about these maps, because there's so many nuances and generalizations that are actually in those maps. I think it's somewhat important to understand. What I did was, and I had helped creating the maps from the IT department, so I give it credit for that. But what I did was to look at the various zones and say, okay, where can, if somebody wanted to grow something, where could they do that? And there are different ways that anybody can grow something. You can grow crops, say in residential areas. If it's vacant land, you can grow, crops. You can, in industrial land, if the industrial land is vacant, you can use that land for growing crops. It's an agricultural use that's permitted in the city. So that gets you residential, that gets you industrial zones where you can grow, have agricultural uses. In many, if not all of the commercial zones, you can have retail sales and service use type, which includes plant nurseries. So if somebody like, I don't know if Tom's Garden Center is one of those zones, for example, but you could have a nursery like that where somebody's kind of got a retail nursery that's commercially used where a person can grow plants and sell them. So there's a variety of ways that you can have agricultural uses throughout the city, and that's sort of reflected in these maps. On top of that, there are various land use applications that a person might need to obtain as well. So it's not like things are permitted outright, and there's different caveats with each of those. But that's how it is for processing, agriculture, and wholesale. So I just looked at the zones throughout the city, looked where those uses are permitted as they're defined by the development code, highlighted those areas, put them on a map, and then with some help from our IT department, put a buffer around those and said, okay, let's remove everything that's within 300 feet of those parcels that are in those zones that allow those uses that are also within 300 feet of a residential zone, mixed-use zone, neighborhood, commercial, and
You keep squeezing it down. I've been sitting here thinking and wondering, could we institute a special, I don't know if we want to have it be commercial or industrial or heavy industrial or whatever, but a special marijuana zone. And maybe we'd have a little piece of property downwind from the sewage disposal plant where we could institute that and just zero it down to almost nothing. Would that be a possibility? Mayor, love it on that.
So with the growing part, though, I mean, would there be some sort of odor containment then, or that would be separate, that we would be having in a code? Because my understanding is the odors can, for a certain amount of time, can be kind of offensive.
That could be, I'm not sure, but one of the things that the council may like to consider is to look at the state regulations that are in place now that govern the commercial marijuana businesses, because they do have in place regulations on odor, particularly for the processing plant. If there was some concern about an impact related to that, there's some regulations in place, or if not, that would be something that the council could consider strengthening or modifying as a manner regulation rather than just replacement of these things. And that's maybe one thing the council might want to think about is what are the particular impacts that are of concern, and we can look at the existing regulations and see if they're addressed there, and if not, we might have some other ways to address things like odor, light, appearance of buildings, and that sort of thing.
Smells good to some people.
But then Bob's comment is one that I've made previously, that place regulations are normally in your zoning code. Manner regulations are a good topic for a council overlay, just as you did, for example, with pawn shop and secondhand dealers. So if you told us even the values that you particularly want to protect, you would give us some guidance on trying to draft regulations on the values. So far, all you've given us is proximity. You don't want them within certain spaces in the hopes that proximity will provide protection for other values. If you give us other direction on specific values, we will do our best to try to propose things that might address your concerns in that regard.
I, for one, would like to follow up on Bob's comment. I'd like to see what those state regulations are.
Yeah.
Because we can sit here and speculate all day long. We may speculate on 75% of what's already prohibited or addressed by the state, and we're wasting our time, and we're just getting frustrated doing it, so.
Yeah, and then we can, I don't know the best way to communicate that to you, but we can give you links to the existing
Links don't
regulations.
help me. I'm
Right.
computer stupid. I need to see
We can
a
give
piece
you
of
paper
paper.
copies, and that's something if you'd like.
Didn't we send out an email with those? Can we just, I think we sent out an email with that, didn't we?
We sent out an email with Exhibit E.
Right.
There's some additional information. If we didn't send that.
Right. You can send out a link and then print out I believe it's about 56 pages.
Right.
Or that's how long it is, so yeah.
Lloyd, come by, we'll print them for you.
There you go.
I did hear yesterday
$1
on
a
the
copy.
news that there is some,
You'll pay.
We'll work something out.
One way or
I'm on a
another,
hard
you're going to
copy.
pay when you do that.
I did hear on the news that there's some new regulations with the state on processing that is going to make it pretty difficult for many dispensaries to even be able to still process. So there's some new rules coming out. So, yeah.
Are these maps available online that we can zoom in to see what the borders are? Not, okay.
Okay, is that enough, council, that you'd like to?
I think we're,
Direction on?
Tonight,
where
have
we're
it.
going to be for tonight.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Beating the
Okay.
dead horse.
Yeah, done with that item. Okay, business from the council. Bessie, do you have anything this evening? Okay, Bill? No. Dick?
I heard on public broadcasting a news item about our struggles with marijuana, and I thought I noted a bit of mirth on the point of in the voice of the reporter. But it seemed kind of strange that we're about the only people that are doing this silly stuff.
For going to the voters? No, a whole bunch of
Yeah,
cities.
well, our prohibition,
Oh.
our puritanical
No,
approach
there's-
to this prohibition thing.
There's more cities statewide that are not allowing recreational than there is that is allowing, so.
Of
Okay.
course, the ones that are pretty good sized.
Yeah. Okay, Rich, anything? Ray?
I think Dick was alluding to the fact that both Sharon and I were on an NPR interview that is available if any of our council people want to, I'll get you the link to it.
Yeah, somebody said today that it was on the news, on the radio, but I
Yeah,
didn't.
on
I
National
didn't
Public
hear it.
Radio.
Yeah, I didn't hear it, so,
I'll send it to the council, I'll send the link.
yeah. Okay, all right. Floyd, anything?
Yes, just one item. Councilor Olson and I both received an email from an elderly lady in our ward who is having trouble. She's on fixed income and she's having trouble making ends meet, I guess, is the bottom line. She makes about $1,000 or so too much in order to qualify for our senior or disabled subsidy for our water and sewer rates. You know, each of us have a residential account, pay 35 cents a month, it goes into a pot, and then people apply based upon some formula that we adopted years ago. I'm not sure that we've ever looked at that and updated it to see what the threshold is to qualify. I would like us to take a quick look at it. You know, I sent an email to Jeff asking kind of what the base was, and, you know, I've forgotten all the details that he told me, but, you know, I think we need to be able to address and keep the threshold updated. As we continue to raise our water and sewer rates, you know, if people's fixed income has now outstripped our previous lower threshold, maybe our threshold needs to move a little too. And so I'd ask staff to take a quick look at it. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it. You know, I think it's a percentage of the median income.
It is, yeah. It's something I had actually hoped to had talked about at the last water rate increase discussion, where we actually forego an increase, but just didn't get around to it. So we actually have that 35-cent surcharge gets collected, and we're actually only expending about 50% of the revenue that's collected for that purpose right now. So we're using that obviously for other water utility functions. But it would be nice to try to offer that program to a few more residents in town. There's not a good way to estimate what percentage we should raise it to in order to try to make it a zero-sum game. It's a little bit of a trial and error. We've had that discussion with the Community Services Consortium. So again, we're only spending about 50%. It's based on one of the criteria to qualify is that I think it's 50% of Lynn County's median income. We could look at raising that to a percentage of your choice and just see how it goes for a while. If we overexpend it, it's not going to be a big deal at that percentage, at that small of a percentage. So if you wanted to think about maybe raising it to a 65, 70, 75 and watch it for a while, see how it goes, and then we can choose if we wanted to make, council could choose, I'm not going to choose. If you want to make future adjustments.
Being for seniors, right?
It's senior or disabled.
Right, and maybe, I think it would be good to come back to us to see how we did, you know, establish those parameters, and maybe it could be even broadened for people that are the 30% or lower income too. So there is many people that are trying to rent houses that are having to pay for their utilities that are at that 30%. So maybe it would be kind of good.
Look at all the criteria.
Yeah.
Be happy to do that.
It's been years since we
If I remember right, in
established
code,
that.
you got to meet all four criteria.
You do.
There's
Yeah.
four criteria you have to meet. Income is just one.
That's correct.
They have to be, I forgot the other three, 18 and I've forgotten.
Has to be, account has to be in your name.
Right.
Right.
Small thing. So,
Can't be
yeah, happy to bring it
things
back
like
if that's
that.
something council would like to look
I
at.
think it'd be good. It's been many years since we.
Yeah, it's one of
looked
those
at
things that we, you know, was a good idea, we're going to try it, we started it, it's been being used,
We haven't had
but
an
we've not
update.
updated it.
Yeah, I agree, yeah, so that'd be great.
Right,
Okay.
thank you.
Yep.
That's it.
Okay.
All right, I will not be
I
here. on-
agree with Floyd, and I think the health ought to keep up with our constantly increasing water bills.
Would you say, Floyd, you weren't going to be
I won't be here on the 1st for the work session with the planning
on the
commission.
1st? Okay, okay. I'm just going to, then I had mentioned it when, you know, Ray Heltz had brought up about the gas tax. So Corvallis is not wanting then to go out. And mostly when we really kind of found out the time frame, we would have to have an ordinance in place, I believe, totally adopted by the 10th of August. So this wouldn't really give us enough time to get it, you know, on the ballot unless, you know, we do meet on the 8th. It's up to the council if you want to have it on the ballot or not. So for November, it would have to take action at your next council meeting.
Without Corvallis being a part of it, it would kind of stick a thumb in the eye of the local gasoline retailers. I mean, if everybody's doing it, well, then it doesn't make any difference one place or another. But if we're the only ones, well, we raise it and they lose business. Be nice if it was all at the same time.
Yeah. Any other thoughts to that? So,
I agree for a change.
okay,
That's 3 times so far.
Yes.
yeah, okay. Well, hopefully then maybe we can look at, does questions for tax measures have to be in November election? Or can they can be on a,
I believe that they
they can be in a
do,
May?
but we could look at that. I don't
Yeah.
recall off the top of my head.
If it
I know
can-
there have been changes on that, and I'd have to look at it.
Right.
But I mean, I think it's pretty clear you're gonna have a hard time doing something for November, so we can decide, we can look at our leisure and find, and let you know when the next opportunity would be for a tax measure.
Right.
Next January.
I just worry about if you wait another year,
Yeah, it's every year. Next one's the
if
longest.
if gasoline goes up back to $4 a gallon, then it's more challenging, but.
Well,
yeah.
I think one of the things that, and I agree, we ought not to do it in November, but I think we need to see what the legislature's coming up with the potential transportation plan, and what, if any, gas tax the legislature is proposing, and how they propose to distribute that, to see what the income would be to us under the state proposal.
Right. As long as we do look at something, because I know 2 years ago, we talked about the same thing, wait for the legislature, they didn't do anything, so, so I would hope we wouldn't wait past, next May on that. In other words, we need some sort of solution that's viable. Yeah, marijuana tax is not going to be paving up 250 miles of streets, so I can guarantee that. That's not a viable solution.
Well, if I could also, for the benefit of the audience, I'm old enough to remember, as perhaps as Floyd is, we previously adopted a gas tax, and it was then referred by the voters, and it was overturned by the voters. And one of the issues there was because the concern was that the retailers were going to suffer a disproportionate impact. In that case, you had diesel fuel also included, and it really brought out opposition from the I-5 fueling centers. I don't know that we have as many of those anymore, but the problem that the council speaks of about if it's perceived to be just one little spot that's affected, that got us a voter overturn last time we did it.
We have the same number we had before.
Yeah.
If council's, ooh, that was loud. If council's willing, I know staff would appreciate an opportunity to come and have a more detailed discussion about the condition of our streets, the funding sources that we have, and what we're able to accomplish with that, and what it would take to be able to maintain the streets in a form that we feel would be adequate. If that's something you'd be interested in hearing, we'd be willing to bring that discussion forward.
I think that'd be good, because if we do go to the voters, then it'd be really nice to kind of prioritize where would those first 5 years of funding go.
Be happy to do that.
Because that would be a piece, taking it to the voters, letting them know where the first 5 years of funds would go towards.
Well,
Okay.
except for the people who didn't get in the first 5 years, and then they'd be
Yeah.
growling and snarling.
Right. Okay. That's it. Jorge, did you have anything?
The only thing I had was just to let the council know that the staff is working on a plan to do some lead testing on some of the facilities, including City Hall, Maple Lawn Preschool, both libraries and senior center.
Okay, great. Thank you.
For clarification, all the lead testing is facility-based.
Correct.
The water in the city mains is not exceeding the action level, correct?
Correct.
So what's happening is that the water from the mains is coming into the buildings, and there's something in the building that's adding to the lead that the people in there are consuming. It's not a threat from the public water supply.
I think it'd probably be good to point out as well, we're not testing those specific facilities because we believe there's a problem. We're just doing it to be proactive.
Correct.
Right. That's great.
We
Thank
did
you.
do lead and copper testing several years ago, where we went into multiple facilities and tested the thresholds and found no action levels in many of those that we tested.
Yeah.
We made a point of talking about our lead testing in our water quality report this year, and that's online on the website.
I just don't want people to think that the water supply itself
Yeah.
is a causative agent. You know, because of the nature of the water within the public system, it extracts some of the chemicals from some of the plumbing utensils interior to the building, but it's not the water itself that's causing the problem.
Yeah, it's just a proactive measure for the building side.
Chris would want me to say that we specifically control the pH of the water as well, so that if the risk is that if you have very aggressive water, you will pull that lead out of those fittings or soldering in the copper pipes in the homes that it was used. And so by controlling the pH, you reduce the risk of pulling those out. So it's a conscious effort that the city makes to try to reduce the potential for it to even occur.
And I've wondered, did the city of Flint make any effort to do that with their water supplies, do you know?
They stopped doing it.
I can't
Or did they
speak to
just-
their,
Did they just pump untreated water out to the public?
No. My understanding is they stopped corrosion protection. And when they stopped the corrosion protection, the corrosion went up.
So did they just quit running their water treatment plant?
I heard the same thing Floyd did. They quit adding a particular chemical or additive that would have prevented the problem.
You know, and I'm going to go back to my days of being a water purveyor.
Yeah.
That's why in the state of Oregon, there's a certification program for operators. You train them on what is important from the chemistry of water to what happens.
Yeah.
In some facilities, in some states, you might have the dog catcher running your water system, and what he knows is to flip the switch to turn the pump on. He has no idea what the chemistry of the water is. So I don't know what the situation in Flint was. My guess is that they were doing it because they thought they were saving money.
I keep waiting to see a report in a scientific magazine or a Time magazine or, what in heaven's name went on there?
They stopped altering the alkalinity of the water.
Yeah, and they're a really acid river water apparently.
Okay, and so Jeff, you did have an item.
And that's not us.
I do, yes. I'll be brief. You have a draft letter in front of you on the dais tonight, so just a quick update on the stormwater permit process that we're in with DEQ. DEQ has released the permit for official public comment for review, and so staff is in the process of reviewing that. We'll likely have several hundred comments that we will submit, just as we did on the last draft. In discussions with staff, we felt that it would also be beneficial, in addition to our detailed comments that we're going to submit, that we had a letter from the mayor on behalf of the city council expressing your thoughts, or what we believe your thoughts were, is what we tried to represent here, on just the big picture items, and that the details would come through staff's comments. And so we'd just like authorization to send a letter of this type. We're still wordsmithing a little bit, and we'd like to get the mayor to sign that next week so we can submit it with our comments.
I would move that we authorize the mayor to sign the letter to DEQ on our Phase 2 MS4 stormwater permit.
Second.
Okay, any discussions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay, is that it, Jeff?
It is, thanks.
Okay, anything else? Staff have anything else? So, okay. With that, then, we do have a work session next Monday, which Floyd, you said you weren't available. And then we have another one on August 8th, and then our city regular session is August 10th. With that, we are adjourned.